Welcome back to Dion Talk. Welcome back to Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person. The question is, are you lazy enough to want to make work optional? Are you poor on purpose? And before we get started, I want to warn you, I'm probably going to offend somebody tonight. Well, not on purpose. Well, maybe a little on purpose. Because I'm not talking about them, the people who get offended. I'm talking about us, the people with thick skin who want to have a better future. If you've ever looked at your bank account like it personally betrayed you, this video is for you. You might be poor on purpose. Now, look, I'm not saying you're broke, but if you ever had Netflix, DoorDash, Amazon Prime, and a Starbucks reward, but no saving account, you might be poor on purpose. We live in a world where people call themselves middle class while financing couches and making monthly payments on their dog's DNA test. I'm not judging. I've been there. I used to think direct deposit meant my money was easier to use. Turns out it just made it disappear faster. So tonight we're talking about choices people make, not because they have to, but because they've gotten comfortable being poor on purpose. Some of these are lifestyle choices. If you financed a car to impress people you don't like, you might be poor on purpose. You bought status instead of freedom. And the repo guy, he doesn't care how good your rims look. If you treat yourself every weekend because you worked so hard and you earned it, but you never pay yourself first, you're not treating yourself, you're tricking yourself. That's not self-care. That's financial self-harm with some whipped cream. If your phone is on its 10th generation and your saving strategy still isn't on version 1 yet, you might be poor on purpose. You got Face ID so your phone recognizes you, but you can't recognize bad money habits? You might be poor on purpose. If you buy takeout 5 times a week, but say healthy food is too expensive, your wallet is the only thing losing weight. It's not that we're bad with money. We're just really good at lying to ourselves. If you say the system is rigged, but never learn how the system works, you might be poor on purpose. You're mad at a game you never learned the rules to. If you think investing is risky, but you rely on a paycheck for 100% of your income, you will end up poor on purpose. People call investing risky because they don't realize they're already gambling. They're just betting everything on one job. That's not job security. That's hope dressed up as a paycheck. If you think saving $5 isn't worth it, but you'll drive 20 minutes for a 17 cents off on a gallon of gas, you might be poor on purpose. And if you think rich people are evil, but you buy all their stuff, congratulations. You are funding your enemies. Money isn't moral. It just amplifies who you already are. If you're generous broke, you'll be generous rich. If you're reckless broke, you'll just wreck bigger numbers later. Now let's talk about credit cards. If you're paying 24% interest to save 10% on a sale, poor on purpose. That's not saving money. That's debt in a sale costume. If the minimum payment sounds like progress, that's not a plan. That's financial NyQuil, just putting your debt to sleep till next month. These are finances. These aren't kids you're babysitting. I have a friend who bragged about his credit card limit getting raised. He said, they trust me more. I said, no, they own you more. He's definitely poor on purpose. If your car loan lasts longer than your relationships, you might be poor on purpose. Guilty. If you binge Netflix, but you won't spend 30 minutes a week learning about money, you might be poor on purpose. You know every plot twist to Stranger Things, but not a single thing about compound interest. You say you don't have time for a side hustle, but can quote 3 seasons of The Office. Does your screen time think you have time for a side hustle? Call the TV the electronic income reducer. And if you won't open your banking app because it stresses you out, that's not anxiety, that's accountability knocking. Does working until you die not stress you out? Be honest. What's the most productive thing you've done this week on your phone besides scrolling? I'll get to that in the comments below. If you say, I'll start saving when I make more money, you are being poor on purpose because you won't have better habits when you have better pay. If you think you can't invest until you're debt free, that's like saying you'll go to the gym after you lose weight. And if you think financial freedom is for other people, you're not only right, you are being poor on purpose because you've already decided you can't win. People think wealth starts with money. And take this quote from Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. Wealth starts with belief. You don't get rich and then act disciplined. You get disciplined so you can get rich. Being broke happens. Staying broke is a choice. You can blame the government, your boss, your ex, your other ex. But the truth is, you don't need a raise. You need a reason. Most folks aren't poor by accident. They're poor by habit. Things happen, but habits are consistent. Every little decision compounds, just like interest, only in reverse. I know, because I did it too. I wasn't poor because I didn't have money. I was poor because I kept acting like I didn't need to learn about it. If you want to be wealthy or rich, just stop living poor on purpose. Financial freedom isn't about Lamborghinis or private jets. It's about sleeping good, knowing your bills are paid, and no one owns your time. If this hits home, drop in the chat. What was your ouch moment? Was it Netflix? It's probably DoorDash. Was that $800 a month car payment with the insurance to go with it? Own it. Laugh at it. But fix it. Because freedom's funny until the check is due. Hopefully, you will share this with somebody who you think needs to hear this. And no, I am not as funny as Foxworthy, but I have the time to write stupid stuff. And I'm trying to get you there too. I hope everybody is having a day full of amazing. I have a friend joining me here in a second. As soon as I text her to let her know that we are ready for her, I had that intro ready. So you get a couple of people to answer your questions. The intro to this will be set off as a separate thing. I might do little short clips of those. I might actually walk around and make those clips because I really think some people are poor on purpose. And they'll complain and they'll blame, but they won't change. Howdy.
Howdy.
How are you today,
Well
Bev?
said. Bravo. I'm
Thank you.
great.
Good to see you here. I haven't really looked at the chat, so I'm hoping it's not 20 lines of turn your sound on. But I'll
I,
get to
I
it
was
here in a
listening,
second.
so I
Good.
know I know you were making sound.
I usually forget the mic sitting over there, so the sound starts off real weak, and then I move it over in front of me when I see it over there.
Oh yeah, I should move my mic, speaking of that.
There you go. See, it happens to the smart people too, not just
Yep.
me.
Now I'm ready.
Cool. So What is going on in the real estate world? While I look at the chat really quick, and this gives people a second to get questions in the chat for a couple of
Yeah.
people who are financially free, one who refuses to retire yet.
So what you were saying first in your intro, I think what the people that do that, I think are for the most part people who kind of gave up on being wealthy and they just figure it's not going to happen for me. I've heard it's not possible. Why not enjoy life because you only live once? Like you could die young, you don't know, all those reasons people give. And they figure why not get the fancy truck or do the DoorDash or whatever frivolous financial thing it is, or not learning about it because they don't feel it's possible. So I think that's probably pretty typical among the people that are doing that. There has to be hope. Like that was the best thing I got out of it is like wealth begins with hope. You have to believe and belief, which goes with hope. Like you have to have that belief that you can do it. And I think seeing people like you and others in the community are great because then you can see, well, these folks did it, so it can be done. But if you don't have those role models, then and you all you have is a lot of people telling you it's impossible, then you're like, well, I might as well go charge up that card or whatever. It's hopeless anyway.
I think there's a couple of different types of people. There's the people who think about becoming wealthy and they get into the Alex Hermosi super hype. I'm just gonna work 10 times harder than everybody else. The Grant Cardone, I'm gonna 10x everything, literally the name of his book. And they realize how hard it is and how risky it can be. And if you diversify too much, there's too much risk and it doesn't hit their risk tolerance. So they give up. I think there's a larger group of people who just never think of it.
Never
They
think of
literally
it.
grew up thinking it's for someone else. It's not meant for me. I didn't get it. I didn't get an inheritance. I haven't won the lottery.
That's what
Uh,
I thought growing up. It wasn't till later, well, later that I realized, oh, wait, this could be possible for me. Um, that was kind of mind-blowing because I was always taught that that wasn't possible. That was the narrative that I was told. And that rich people are jerks and they're taking advantage of everybody else and greedy and all those things.
One of the things I think is really important is the way you put it. Um, People can watch content like this and see that there are people like us or like some of the people that come on the channels that we interact with that have reached financial freedom, so they think it's possible. What I think is most important is, and I'll use two examples. Frank and Cynthia Contreras, old guy REI, and Alex, the accidental investor, and probably Curtis and maybe a couple of others. But they kind of had the idea that they could, they've watched some YouTube and they think, okay, I can do this. So there's other people doing it, so I'm at least going to try. And then they get a chance to hang out. Frank came and spent a week here, helped me tile a bathroom. Me and Alex have gone
Right.
to lunch a few times, and we
Yeah.
just did a portfolio tour of his. When someone like that gets a chance to actually spend a few hours around someone like me, and this is not to be humble, this is to just show how amazingly average I am with nothing special, nothing smart, nothing uh, unique. Then they sit back and they go, of course they can do it. Like the confidence level goes through the roof because they're like, wow, if this totally normal average person can do it. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's really important to get to those local REI meetups and get around the successful people. And then there will be some interaction with people where they realize there isn't something special. There might
Yeah.
be some special people out there, but the majority of people who reach financial freedom through investing over a long enough period of time, they're just average people that made a few small changes.
Yep. And that's what was the big eye opener for me was seeing people that I knew that I was hanging out with investing in real estate. Here's how you do it. And they were regular people, didn't come from money, and just leading by example and encouraging me to do it too. That made all the difference.
There is a question here. Can you share the lease you use? I will review it and take it to a local real estate attorney to make sure certain complies with local laws. I've had a few people email me and ask for some. I actually have one that I got an email this morning that I need to send the lease to. I'm happy to send it. I wouldn't use it unless you're in my county and my state. And even then, I'd have an attorney look at it because it's what I'm comfortable with. Uh,
Yeah, the RHA WA rental housing. Association of Washington has all they're all about that. So I don't know what state that person is in, but there's probably some equivalent where they are. And you really need to go with something that is tailored to your local laws. Otherwise, it could be useless and get you in a really bad spot.
Yeah, useless and get you in trouble. Like I can actually
Hmm.
have things that void the entire lease.
Yeah.
One of the things in Washington State is the definition of deposit means something that can be refunded.
Yeah, you
So
can't
if you,
call it a security deposit unless it's always can be refunded.
so if your lease contained the sentence non-refundable pet deposit, the entire lease was void. Nothing nothing else in it could be used in court because it had invalid language in it. And so you have to know your local laws. It can be that nuanced too. There's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of people here saying hello, howdy. I'm looking through for questions. Brian, I believe you said when raising rents, tenants don't care about your expenses going up. When not doing the binder strategy, how do you frame a rent increase? So how did you normally do rent increases before you ever heard of the binder strategy?
So even though I didn't use the binder strategy, I would just show people here's other houses for rent in the area. Yours has been low for a long time, yours has been this price for however many years, because I never was excessive with the rent increases, I like to kind of keep it always a little bit below market to keep them motivated to stay. Um, and I would just say the values are here. Take a look at what's for rent, and I'm not suggesting we go there, but we need to go here. And sometimes I would give a reason why, although ultimately nobody cares about your reason why. It doesn't matter what your reason is.
I agree. And they don't care about your expenses. And what I did say in a video and where the reference would come from is if you have a paid off property and a property with a mortgage and the tenants cared about your expenses, those would rent for different amounts.
Yeah.
Tenants don't know if properties are paid off or not. They just pay whatever the area average rent is or somewhere around it. So my strategy was, buy a property a couple months later after I know if I want to keep the tenants or not, use the binder strategy to get the rents where they are. And then I would do 5% every other year. That doesn't mean I still don't do the binder every other year. And just like Beth, here's where rents have gone to. We're still significantly below that, but it's been, a year without an increase last year. This year there'll be a 5%. And now that rent control exists in Washington State, I'm doing 7% a year and showing the binder strategy. So I'm not, the only change is I'm not saying, what do you think is fair? I'm saying, here's where rents are. You're far below it. A 7% increase doesn't even get you close to where rents are. That's the new change. So an educated tenant is less likely to get upset about a rent increase. It's not about the expenses. The reason I show the expenses when I show the binder, the cover and what I've paid and what my taxes and insurance are on is just to show them that this is information both of us can look up. It's just to show transparency. That's a good question. But just like Beth, let them know what rents are because if rents in an area for a two-bedroom unit are $2,000 and your tenant is paying $2,300, your tenant should be educating you. They should be showing
Yeah, I
you
wouldn't be
comps and
asking for
saying,
an increase in that case. I would let it
correct.
ride.
So that only makes sense to go, if your rents are low, here's why it's an increase. If the rents are 2,000 and that's the average for this year, that's a year you might not do an increase because you don't set rents based on your expenses. Even if your expenses go up, you set rents on area average rents.
Yeah. And the tenants are going to be looking around to see what else is, even if you didn't bring it up to them, they would probably look and see what else is available to size up their options.
And then Chester, thank you for giving away a month of membership. And it went to Deconstructing Dreams, a Financial Journey. That's cool. And just so you're aware, what that is we get on Zoom together a couple times a month for the members, and we learn the art of looking and analyzing a deal. And occasionally now we've been adding in looking at a rental listing and tweaking it to make it more attractive. But usually it is just to learn the skill. And Deconstructing Dreams, even if this is just the only month you don't renew or anything, it's like $2.99 a month just to keep out the haters and the bots and the scammers is now that you have access to all of the previous videos. They stay up, they don't go down. Beth, are you seeing properties days on market increase or over asking offers go, or what are you seeing in your market, your local market?
Definitely days are increasing. Days on market are increasing. Um, no, new listings that are priced and presented well are still selling quickly. And there's a lot of them that have been just languishing on the market. And sometimes it's through no fault of anyone. It's just that price is what they were selling for a few months ago, and now they're just not moving. So I'm seeing a little bit of that, and we'll probably see that continue through the end of the year. And usually around this time between now and the holidays, we don't see too many new listings on the market. And the ones that have been languishing on the market will start to either get under contract and sell one by one, or some might take them off the market to try again later. We'll start seeing both of that happening. And then what happens then is usually this how the seasonality works is that in December it goes down to life support, almost nothing for sale over the holidays. And then buyers are ready after the holidays, but sellers aren't for another month or so while they get their house ready after the holidays. That's why we get our market pop in January, which a lot of sellers are usually surprised when I talk to them about that, that January is our busy time. And that's why it happens every single year. But we're following that pattern now where it's like there's definitely some opportunities now to get some deals. We're seeing people getting below list on a lot of houses. We've been having buyers get buy downs paid for and money off, and sometimes a closing cost credit too. Depending on the circumstances and the motivation of the seller, you can get those things. So, um, especially if you have a handful of houses all competing around the same price point, somebody's going to have to give to get their house sold, and that's going to be the person who's got to move. And that's how then it sets a new lower threshold, and then everybody kind of falls down to that. So I'm seeing a little bit of that right now.
I think it's very entertaining. So I've been making content now since 2021, so about 4 years ish, maybe a little longer now. Uh, and every single year, about this time, we get rents are softening, days on market is increasing, it's the end of the world, and the people with your experience are going, yeah, it's the fall. Like that's
Literally every
statistically
single
every
year.
year.
It happens in the summertime too, and then it gets a little better around September, October, and then it starts to drop off again. And then people
Almost
are
every
shocked in January when all of a sudden there's some bidding wars again. Like, oh my, every year it's been happening, even in these slower, higher interest rate years. It doesn't necessarily last very long, but it does happen almost like clockwork every single year. Don't be surprised.
almost every one of my purchases was done in winter, except for one I closed in May, like a birthday present to myself. Um, and so if I was listing, I would want to list in January. If I was buying, I'd like to buy just before that during the winter slowdown. But I don't list based on the market that way. I'm based on what's going on with me. When am I ready? When did I find a great deal?
Yep.
It just happens that there's less competition in the winter, and the days on market do increase, so you're more likely to get an offer accepted. I'm selling a property probably as soon as I get back from Thailand. I'm probably selling my Port Orchard duplex, which is on the water, view on both sides. Um, and best thing to do for the like money would be to list it in January, but I'm in Thailand until February, and I'm not going to list until I get back and move all my stuff out.
February and March are still good too. It always seems to shift somewhere between Easter and Mother's Day weekend, somewhere in there. That's where all of a sudden all the agents in their chat groups and stuff start freaking out because they had a slow open house weekend all of a sudden. And what happened? It's one of those it's somewhere in that zone where the door shuts on that. But like you mentioned, trying to time the market is tricky. Like what matters the most is what's the best timing for you, whatever your situation is. People are successful all year round. People who can do well right now if they need to. They just got to do what they need to do to get have a successful sale right now. It can happen.
There's a few comments about the intro here. I appreciate each one. People were paying attention. That's good. Michelle says, howdy, Beth.
Hello, Michelle.
And Julie asks if I've watched Caleb Hammer. I've watched a few. I can't handle the stress
It's
of
too
how some people
painful
are.
for me. I can't watch that car wreck.
Right. It's that's too much of a train wreck or car wreck to watch.
Yeah.
And then I saw a question. My chat moved, which is good. Christine I think investing in Florida for this question. A potential tenant's info checks out, but his boss and ex-landlord are bad at responding, so I can't do qualitative verification. Tomorrow is day 3. Should I just increase the security deposit and accept him? First, is that legal in your area? I know Florida, if you're in Florida with this rental, I know you kind of travel a lot, Christine. In Washington, the deposit now can't be more than 1 month's rent. So we have to be careful with the tenant saying, I know I have a bad credit score, but I'll double the deposit so you give me a chance. I don't know if I'd want to get in trouble with that. Second thing is, can you verify with pay stubs? And I'm asking that because I never care about what they make, but I do try to verify employment as a chance to catch them in a lie. So if they're not responding, can you say, show me, pay stubs, bank deposits, what is the credit score? Like that's, I rely almost entirely on credit score and eviction history. You can usually get those a lot faster. What would you do if the boss and ex-landlord were slow to respond?
I wouldn't rent to him if I can't verify that. Or I'd find alternative ways to verify it, like you're talking about. Although I have to say, I stopped screening tenants a long time ago. I mean, I have someone else do it now. But when the laws got too complicated where I am, I didn't want to risk making a mistake. But I do know that that's asking for trouble if you let somebody in without verifying those things.
Alex says he's selling an excavator today, so he won't have to save a down payment. You saved a down payment, you just stored the value in that equipment. Ryan says Millennial Mike is definitely above average. There's rumors his dad is Christopher Reeves and his grandpa is Marlon Brando. Nice. Showing your age there, if those are the two guys you referenced, but that would be the dad age, I guess. You guys just spent a couple days together in Gary. Howdy, Mick, cracked canvas. Dion, if you were buying your first property today, what would you buy? Well, I'll start with you, Beth. If you were buying your very first property today, what would you buy?
I'd buy a house hack that would make a good rental when I move out and buy the next one.
Word for word. So if I was starting today, cracked canvas, and if it was like my very first, I would be working in it because I'm an employee. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I'd be working in a field long enough to be bankable. I'd be saving a down payment for an owner occupied, preferably house with ADU or duplex. That very first one, since you said it very first one, I probably would prefer duplex over fourplex just because I still have the mentality that I can handle the mortgage if the tenant's not paying, if it's the very first one. I don't know if I can handle 3 not paying. But second or third or fourth property, I would definitely start looking at 2 to 4. What's the best option? Steve, the accidental landlord who just got back from Spain, what's your honest opinion on subject to opportunity for property number 2? It's a low equity situation, seller moving in with parents to be a caretaker. Have you ever done a subject to?
No, I feel like uncomfortable with the whole thing. And it's not, I mean, I've done lots of seller financing and things like that. I feel like that's legitimate and not that sub two isn't, but it just feels like there's this whole shady element around it. And I don't mean to, it's just my opinion, guys. Some of you are probably killing it doing that, but it's not for me.
So the good answer is it could be for someone else. It could be a valid strategy. You're not comfortable with it. I like to do what's called evergreen investing. Right now, today, where people are calling it's the peak, we've hit the plateau, prices and rates are both high, don't buy, I'm going to buy. I'm buying between now and when I sell this property. So I'm going to be hunting for a property in the next few months. I don't care about the market. I'm going to buy the next great deal or good deal that I find. Base hit, I'm fine with that. But subject to is not evergreen. When prices were trending up and interest rates were trending down, a bank is least likely to call a loan when they find out somebody that is subject to exchange. Because if you now refinance, they're going to get a lower interest rate. So why call it? That's not the place we're in now. A lot of people have an interest rate from 2020 to 2022 of 3 to 5%. And if you do a subject to, you got a great purchase with that low interest rate, but the bank is more likely to call the loan because a refinance now gets them a higher interest rate. So if it is your strategy and you've been doing subject to since 2010 and you have the system in place, you have the reserves, you have the cash flow, sure, risk it. But it's not my strategy, not one I would use. That
For
doesn't
me,
mean
I
it's
feel
not
like
right.
I'd be risking losing my license too if I did that. Like if it felt like there was lender fraud potentially going on, etc. So I'm
Star
held to a
Wars
different
Mary,
standard.
do you own any one bedroom, one bath units?
No.
I don't as well, although I have made offers on some over the years. So I would own them. It's really hard to find a one bedroom, one bath that makes mathematical sense in my market. I think I was looking at a 5 or a 6 unit when I was making like a DSCR loan offer on all one bedroom units. So I would own it. Um, the reason it would also hit my box, I like to check as many boxes as possible. I just met with somebody recently who closed on a deal. The math was kind of okay, like it wasn't a bad deal, but it checked off so many other boxes. I told her I would absolutely buy this. This is the deal I would buy. You're buying one I would buy. So congratulations. Um, so a one bedroom doesn't check off my box of 2 bedrooms and a garage because it means more space for more stuff, less likely to move. But does it have pet friendly fenced yards? Are there washer dryer hookups? Is there enough parking? Does the math work? Like all of the boxes have to be checked. I would look at a one bedroom the same.
Yeah, I would consider it. I wouldn't rule it out. But
And
there's
then
such a big difference between the rent you get on a two bedroom versus a one bedroom. That's usually what makes it not work.
right. So if the math worked, then the price would be right, sure. But
Mhm.
normally it hasn't in our market at least. Jason is asking, what do you check for possible new tenants?
What do I check
Mhm.
for screen? Now, again, I have someone else do the screening, but the main thing I want to see is they have to have, because of where we are and how hostile it is toward landlords, they have to have great credit, at least good enough, they can't have bad credit, and they have to have good verifiable rental history. Those are the main things that are most important to me. Um, yeah.
So I'll do the same. I use Hemlane right now to list a property. So you get the response from Zillow or Apartments or whatever platform the tenant found it on. So I'll get a credit history. I'll check that. I prefer a 700 credit score or higher. If it's lower than 700, I'll use a cosigner. Cosigner signature has to be notarized so that they know that they're actually involved in this. And no eviction history ever. I don't care if it was 100 years ago. I don't want that. I won't rent to a tenant if I find out there was an eviction ever. Again, I verify employment just as a chance to catch them in a lie, but I don't care about income. I know people making two, $300,000 a year late on every bill, and I know people with a $20 an hour job that are fine with money. So I don't care about the type of income. What I do is when I'm showing a property, I like to do open house format, Jason. So I schedule everybody to come for 2 hours, 2 hours on a Thursday evening or a Saturday at noon or whatever fits my schedule and the most of the applicants' schedules. And then part of my soft criteria that you can't articulate and would never put in writing is how does that tenant interact with other people interested in the unit? Very easy for them to be yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, with the people showing the property because you have control and impact their future. I want to know how they interact with people who don't have control because I have tenants that these new tenants are going to be living next to. So it's kind of a vetting process to make sure that they're decent humans when it comes to interacting with other humans. Not real easy to articulate that or put it in a listing. Probably not legal, but it's a gray area I'm comfortable in because if somebody checked off my boxes but was completely rude, that's a box enough for me not to check. Julie says rent has not increased in Everett, Washington for a long time. Right now, I have two one-bedroom units listed for 14.45. That's pretty high rent for a one bedroom. And around me, Port Orchard, Bremerton, you can find one bedrooms for 1,000 to 1,200. So you're 20% higher. I'd be curious what two bedrooms go for because here they go for 1,800 ish. Alex has a one bedroom, I think, ADU that's going to be listed pretty soon. I'd like to see what he rents it for. Lives pretty close to me. Curtis is gearing up to buy. I know you had 10,000 for reserves for the properties, but did you also have personal reserves? Do you look at your reserves as your business and you, or do you just have your reserve account?
I just have my reserve account at this point. I don't have it split up.
I don't think that I've ever had it split up. It's that's the reserves. And Curtis, there's been some inflation. I think 15,000 is a good base right now. Maybe even a little more, but I had 10,000 in like 2013, and I was comfortable with that. Uh, Around four properties, I increased it to 30,000 as a reserve because I wanted more money going to work, and that would have been personal business all the same. Sid just purchased two properties last week, 10% cash on cash return. I saw somebody the other day saying it's impossible on one of my comments. You can't get a 10% return. And in the members only, we reviewed a deal that was 19% unless we went with extremely conservative numbers and ended up being a 16%. So it's market. If you're Rob or Ryan and you live in San Diego, a positive number would be great, let alone a 10%. So congratulations, Sid. Now have five properties, six doors in 4 years. Gross rent 7,100, net 2,500 a month. Risk Vice goes to Phoenix, and self-managed are just continue in Indy. I don't know if there's some autocorrects going on there.
Way to go buying those units in 4 years. That's great.
Yeah, in these years where everyone was saying don't buy because there's a crash coming every single
Yeah.
year.
I love seeing people taking action and doing the hard things to make things better later. So future you will be happy.
Julie asked a question I have an answer to, but I want to hear yours first. If I list my duplex in Marysville, so you're familiar with Marysville, it's a little bit
Yes.
north of Seattle. Should I list in February, March, or April? Now, is this to sell or I'm going to say it's to sell because she said list.
I don't think it matters as much with multifamily because the seasonality I'm talking about is more for owner occupants. So I don't think it really matters. I think you do fine any of those months.
Brian asks my favorite question. How are you raising rents by 7% every year and are still under market? Do they start really low or is your market rent going up quickly? So, Julie, I hope you're paying attention to the rents in the area because you said Everett hasn't gone up in a while. We just instituted rent control this year in Washington. Landlords will leave places empty or do 2 months free before they lower the rent. We have big apartment complexes in Port Orchard, tiny town, like 16,000 people, with 2 months free rent on an apartment because they can't lower the rent because now they know they're locked in with rent control. A 7% increase on rents will not keep up with rents in a rent control state because it's not how much rent can go up each month or each year. It's how much landlords can increase rent when they have a tenant turnover. And that'll be 15 or 20% year on year for the next 3 or 4 years in a row. So never a concern of mine. Charles, who should buy both helicopters, what happens when peer pressure and talking action meet? Got a customer that would use a helicopter. So starting the mission study in this asset. Thanks, Mark and Dion. So you got there. You're buying one. Good. Rob, we don't talk about patio. We talk about patio all the time. We just don't go there. Micmac, how often do you run a double entry audit of your financials? AKA locate the size of your Zuber rat wheel. How often do you look at how much you spend every month?
On rentals, etc. I
Or
mean,
just
I
your personal life?
I don't anymore. I have a
Right.
very, very good CPA that makes sure that IRS gets all what they need and make sure I'm optimized for taxes. And I just kind of look at my overall balances and make sure it's not dipping below where it's supposed to be, and I feel good.
I
There
met
was a
with some,
time when I had to be a lot more careful about it, but thankfully things have evolved. So,
when we're in growth mode and you have to be frugal for certain things, we're absolutely more cautious of our finances. I've never had a budget. I never looked at my finances. I determined wants and needs pretty early on. The only reason I looked at finances was to make YouTube videos. So I've done it a few times to look at videos. On Thursday, I'm going to be on the financial firefighters video again with a gentleman who was on last week who lives on about $600 a month. And everyone in the comments said they call BS that no one can do that. And I get the same thing when I say I live on about 4,000 a month. Uh, the audit of your financials has never happened for me, really. And what, so I was meeting with somebody recently to look at the deal. Like I said, she was buying a deal. She wanted to know if it was a good deal. So we were looking at everything. Math was part of it. And this is the part that nobody believes, but I'm going to say it really slow. When I'm looking at a deal, a potential property that I'm going to buy, I'll look at the math for a few minutes. I'll run it on a calculator, the rental calculator app. And if it is positive cash flow enough for me to be interested, I'm going to say it slow. I will never think about the math on that property again, ever in the history of my entire life, ever. Unless I make a YouTube video to explain how that property performed. It doesn't matter. Math is, do I want it? Because I don't go to my properties and go, is there enough parking? And then worry if there's enough parking every year. Did the cash flow meet my needs right at the beginning? Okay, never think about it again. Same thing with my personal spending. It's a good question, though.
I still do look for things where I can optimize it, and I just did that today, called the internet provider and got a better deal, got my price down, like I don't want people to think that I'm careless about just spending money recklessly. Not, but I don't obsess over it either. I don't count the pennies though.
Right. It was the financial audit that I don't do. I'm 100%. These are switches I don't know that ever turn off. I have no problem spending money. I get sick to my stomach at the thought of wasting money. So
Yeah.
do I look at all my financials? No. But do I compare things? Do I wait for a certain day if it's going to go on a sale? Would I use coupons if I shopped in stores? Absolutely. So I don't want to waste money. I don't want to spend more money than I need to. But I have no problem spending money. If I pointed out how much I spent in an online game in the last month, people would say, you could have bought another rental. But I didn't waste it because I enjoy that. Now, did I do that during growth mode? No. My poor kids didn't even have cable or streaming services. They had the boxed edition of the Friends DVDs and grew up on them. They didn't need more than that.
I
Uh,
still don't do DoorDash and stuff like that. If I can't drive over there and get it, I'm just gonna eat something else. I just can't justify that even now.
I have three kids, and my son has never borrowed money. My daughters have never borrowed money, but I have my two daughters. If they called to borrow money, of course I would probably say yes. My kid, I'd just give them money. But my one daughter, who DoorDashes everything, I'd have a total dad moment and go, "This is why you're borrowing money." And I get to know that she's never borrowed money, so I don't even get to say anything about her finances. But every time I've even been near her house, there's a DoorDash happening.
Somebody I know who remained anonymous was complaining about money, and then in the next conversation mentioned that their DoorDash was between 1,000 and 1,500 a month. And that was just like, I couldn't comprehend
Well, a lot
that.
of people think it's the fee of the DoorDash, and it's not. There's additional charges from the restaurant for it to be packaged, for it to be delivered. Like,
I tried it one time and I got some cold burger that cost like $50 and I'm like, this is just total waste. So
All Nighter Hider is headed back to Gary to hang out with Millennial Mike some more, or they were just hanging out there, probably going back to finish up that triplex. Ocean View has a question for you. How do you approach a seller who is priced above market and has done zero reductions since listing in July?
well, if it's listed, then it would go through the agent. So I would call that agent and I would ask, like, hey, what's going on with 123 Main Street? I see it's been on the market for a little while. What's the activity been like? Get them talking. What's the activity been like? Have you had any offers? What's the feedback that's been going on, happening with it? What's the seller situation? What are they looking to accomplish? And usually when you ask those questions, you'll be able to get some indicator of how things are going. And the idea is to key into the motivation. And if they're open to if you think they might be open to negotiation. Because if they're not realistic and they don't need to sell and they're just really stubborn and they're going to sit there as long as it takes, then, well, they're probably not the right. You could try, but your chances of success are going to be pretty low. But if it's like, yeah, they got it, they already moved to Arizona and they've started a new job there and they bought a house there, they need to sell this one, like that's going to be somebody who's pretty motivated, so somebody like that. But if they haven't dropped the price since July, that would indicate somebody being pretty stubborn, but you never know. Sometimes it's the seller. Sometimes the seller has no idea what to do. They're going off their agent. Maybe their agent's not very good. You don't know.
You could run into somebody like me. I'm going to list a property after February when I get back from Thailand. And if it sells for the price that I want 750 for a duplex on the water in Port Orchard, where off the water duplexes probably go for 6 or 650. If I get my price, great. If it sits, I'll turn it into a rental and keep it. Like I don't need to lower the price. I just don't want to cross the bridge to deal with a rental. That's the only reason
Yeah,
I'm
and so
selling
if
it.
I were
So,
your agent and somebody called and asked, I would just say that's what's going on.
yeah.
If the right buyer comes along and it's a fit, then it's gonna sell. And I would justify why it's worth 750 and those kinds of things too, you know. So,
Christine says the tenant she was asking about, all the information matches up, pay stubs, bank statements, lease agreements, credit check, background check. Just can't get in touch with the boss on the phone or landlord. I would ask for proof of deposit of rents too, but I wouldn't eliminate somebody because I can't get a hold of their boss. Is there someone else at the company you could check with? Maybe.
yeah.
Rob says, I still need that $1 million purchase. Yes. My goal is to find a fourplex that costs over $1 million. But if I run into a duplex that's just a great deal, I'm going to buy it. I mean, I've wanted a fourplex and I bought in two duplexes in the amount of time where I wanted the fourplex. Ian, howdy. My spouse is nervous about growing past three properties because we now have four mortgages. Due to the amount of debt we have taken on, any tips to help influence her to keep her growing? Well, Beth, you've been able to keep a spouse, something I've never been able to do. What advice do you have for somebody who would like to alleviate the fears of their spouse?
So I have, I think, 10 mortgages or something like that, 9 or 10, something like that. Um, and it doesn't keep me up at night whatsoever because it just depends, you know, if I look at like, well, all right, my payment is here, the income is here, the equity has gone up. Like if the property is paying for itself and you're making a profit, who cares about the debt? It's kind of the mental shift of the good debt versus bad debt, you know, and I think that having especially a fixed rate mortgage on an income producing property is good debt, and I don't see that as a harmful bad thing. We're talking, it's not the same as credit card or a car loan or those types of debt, which you should be wary of. Like if I had four car loans that were all, you know, $800, I'd be concerned about that. So even though, you know, some people say like, well, this is my Lamborghini, you know, multiplex pays for the Lamborghini. I don't think of it that way, you know, but like some people even go to that extreme with it. But I would say as long as it's producing income, if that debt is producing income that by a good margin exceeds what it costs you and it's fixed and you have reserves and you can handle it, I don't, to me, the debt is just sort of, it's a tool and that's it. I don't think about it any more than that.
So, first, I think the way the question is, any tips on helping influence her? Instead of influence, I would try to educate. And the first is with Beth's explanation there, these are mortgages that make money. So I'd have a couple of questions. One, as you increase properties, I would want to increase the amount in reserves. So if you articulate that to your spouse, because there is more risk with more mortgages, here's one of the levers we're going to pull. We're going to have more in reserves. The second thing is, what's your loan to value on the entire portfolio? If you're above 70%, maybe your spouse has a good idea and you shouldn't be so levered. But if you're under 70%, you're losing levered appreciation, levered depreciation. You can actually start to pay more taxes on your rental income. And then what's the ultimate goal with the portfolio? Is it financial freedom? Does it happen with four properties if you own them long enough to get them paid off? Or would another couple of properties with more levered appreciation and more cash flow get your spouse something that they want? I met with a young gentleman in Florida several years ago. I think it was 2021, I think. And he wanted the house hack, but his spouse wasn't on board. And we went over the numbers, and this house hack that they were looking at buying would add $600 a month to their cash every month that they get to keep. And the solution was $200 of that goes to the spouse that he can never ask her. This was a super young couple. So $200 is a big difference every month. She can take her friends to lunch. She can get self-pampering, whatever she wants to do with this $200, he can never question it. The $400 extra goes to the next investment because that's what he wanted. He doesn't get money to spend because he wants to invest to own investments. And that was enough to sway her over. So, what is there about adding more properties that could benefit your spouse, including the time freedom that you both get from retiring early to have more time together? But yeah, the risk of more mortgages can be offset by saying, here's the gains and the reserves that we can add.
Yeah.
Don't go the Dion route. Just go get a new spouse. Sid, question. I plan on buying my sixth property in Phoenix using my 401k early draw as my primary and rent by room. Your thoughts as penalty is waived for primary residence. Beth, would you recommend somebody take money out of their 401k to buy a primary residence and rent by room?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider that. I don't know that I have a 401k, but only something I started later just for tax savings. But so I'm not, you can withdraw without a penalty for primary residence. I guess I'm just kind of learning as we talk about this question. But if you could, yeah, I would absolutely do that.
Yeah, I think it changes with lenders. It's usually up to $50,000 and it might be $15,000. Go to ChatGPT and verify what that is. But there's an amount you could take out to buy a primary residence. The thing that makes me a yes on this also, Sid, is sixth property. I don't recommend touching home equity, retirement accounts, or anything if it's your first or second or maybe even third deal while you're still making all your mistakes. Because if you speed things up, this is a Coach Carson quote, all it does is speeds up your mistakes that sometimes happen before you know it. So if you make more mistakes and then find out, that's not good. But if this is your sixth property, you've got your landlord investing legs under you, you know how to screen tenants, find tenants, or have a property manager, you know what to expect with cash flow. I was my one, two, three, four, with my fifth property. I emptied, no, sixth property. So it was the same thing. Well, same thing, sixth property. I emptied my retirement accounts and used the entire thing, paid the taxes, paid everything, and just put it into the down payment for the next triplex that I purchased. So once you're into it a ways, I'm all for it. Ryan says, I'm looking at a sub two to subvert depreciation recapture and acquire a seller financing deal. I have unconventional methods as risk mitigation, an experience and a network and a bunch of money in Bitcoin that you can bail yourself out with if you need to. So Ryan, yes, you can absolutely do that. Rob, define great credit. How do you define great credit?
I think over 700 is pretty good credit. I think great credit is like over 750. I think that's how lenders look at it too. If you're 740 or above, you're going to get the best terms on a loan. This is what banks look at it.
There was a period of time, I think last year, where they raised it to 760 for a bit and then it dropped back down to 740. So lending fair changes that.
Yeah, it's
For
always
me,
changing.
700 is great credit. I'll also look at credit history if it's a little bit below that. And there's a reason I can cipher from a year or two ago that's not likely to happen again. Sid took back a message to make me lose sleep and wonder forever and ever. Ryan says 610 is great credit in Gary. You're also looking at mostly Section 8 in Gary, so that could be a change in your credit requirements. I'm not a fan of it. Even with my Section 8, I require 700. Alex will be renting his ADU for 1500. It's a one-bedroom house. Yep. San Diego, slightly negative would be great. William, when did you cross over there having mandatory spending each month? Seems like that would be a big shift. So financial independence happened 2018, 2020. I started doing the required spending because I didn't want to retire and live frugally. That was not the point. If I had to be frugal, I would have just kept working. So about 2 years before I retired, I started doing I must spend $2,000 a month eating out. I must have a vehicle worth this much money. I must travel this much. All that started about 2 years before I retired. So closed on my first duplex 2013, 7 years into investing, I started doing reverse budgets. Brian, how's the audiobook coming? Not well enough. I think I'm going to lock myself in a room in Thailand and knock the audiobook out. CW3, I justify using DoorDash when I'm working at a job site because my time is worth more staying at work than driving. Sitting in traffic waiting for food. The $8 to $10 more is well worth it. It's usually $40 more when I look at my daughter's bill.
It's
She'll
a
get a
lot
$30
more.
meal and it's $70.
I do kind of live in the middle of nowhere, so it costs more to drive it out here. It's always cold. The one time I tried it, it was cold and soggy and cost $50 for a burger. So if it was 8 to 10 more, then it'd be a lot easier for me to justify it.
I have a text from a tenant. That's always interesting.
Dun, dun, dun.
Uh,
Something
but
broke.
nothing broke. Just random text from tenant. Okay. Delroy, a new tenant is asking me if she can install security cameras in a triplex. I'm leaning towards no to protect the privacy of other tenants. Should I install my own security cameras?
Where, like outside in the alley or in the
Well,
common
she's
areas?
probably common areas or in her unit. I don't think she can put them anywhere in the other units, but yeah.
No, I mean like if I was gonna have outside cameras in if I don't know, in their own unit, I guess that'd be okay as long as they don't put a bunch of holes in the walls, I suppose. But um if there was gonna be exterior cameras, I would probably want them to be my cameras instead of because I don't like tenants to modify the building because they usually don't do a good job. And I don't want their thing that they bought attached to my building. I want it to be all my stuff.
I'm on the other end of the spectrum. During my conversations with tenants, I almost always recommend getting a Ring doorbell, the Comcast system set up, an Arlo camera system, all the public areas. Probably, and it's actually helped several times where there was a vehicle prowl, somebody broke into a car, and you can go to the other units and say, "Hey, did you guys see this?"
Oh yeah, I mean when you mentioned it as Ring camera, I think of that differently for some reason, but I don't know why. But yeah, of course like Ring camera and I don't want to be getting motion alerts when somebody comes up to their door to drop off an Amazon box or something.
I
So
put
yeah.
in the Arlo system if I have a vacant unit. I have
Yeah.
Wi-Fi turned on there temporarily, even if it's just a month, and I'll put up my own Arlo system, which is just Costco or Amazon, I think carries them now. Uh, so I have
Yeah.
a spare one of those. And I think we are caught up on questions. Unless I missed some, they can put them in again. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out with us on a random Tuesday. And
Always fun.
yeah, these are some good questions, and hopefully the information helps some
Yeah.
people who are going to change and not be broke on purpose. What is next for you in your buying for your portfolio?
Oddly enough, I'm thinking about selling a few things. So I'm pruning. I think I heard is it Coach Carson talks about the pruning. I've done a few rounds of pruning over the years, and I feel like I'm ready to do a little more pruning. So, meaning sell some, I'm getting ready to sell one of my investment properties. We just gave notice to the tenant that we're going to sell it, and I'm not even going to 1031. I'm gonna pay the tax. I know
Yeah,
for
there's
some
been a
people
few
that's
that
sacrilege, but it's like I'm at a point now where the proceeds would be of better use to me elsewhere. And if I was just going to keep it invested in a property, I would just keep it in that one. But um, that's what I'm doing. So I at this point have no intention to buy. For a while there, I was thinking about things like buying something out of state that, like in Arizona, that I could use for a part-time retirement home later. And then I realized that makes no financial sense whatsoever. And it would eat away at my freedom, which is not what I'm after. So because I was gonna sell that property and roll it into a property in like Sedona or someplace, and then I realized, no, that's gonna put me in a worse financial position, not a better one, and that's not what I'm after these days. And I want to have more liquid cash than tied up in equity alone right now. So I'm gonna do
both
some pruning.
both Zuber and the lumberjack landlord have sold properties and just paid the taxes. They've both done 1031s. They've both done things like that. Um, I'll have an interesting one. I'm not going to do a 1031. I'm going to be paying some taxes because where I live, it's a duplex. So 50% of it has been depreciated since I moved in. 50% of it is owner occupied. So IRS 121 rule means I get up to $250,000 in gains on my half tax free.
Yeah.
The other half, I'm going to pay taxes and depreciation recapture on and be just fine with it. Sometimes it's not about um, optimizing taxes. Like take advantage
Yep.
of the benefits when you can, but don't let them rule your life.
My CPS said to set aside 50,000, although he tends to overestimate to try to make it better when they actually file the taxes. Not worse, you don't get surprised, but so I'll earmark 50,000, set it aside, and I'll use the rest for other things to put me in a better financial spot.
If somebody wants to reach out with questions, Beth, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm easy to find. You can Google my name, Beth Traverso. You'll find my website, Beth Traverso Group, or you'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, etc. Um, and I'm part of the One Rental at a Time community, so you'll find me on Zuber's channel or in the school. So yeah, I'm easy to
Awesome.
find out there.
Everybody have an evening full of amazing.
Thanks,
Uh,
everybody. Thanks, Dion.
Thank you. For the month of November, remember there will be course calls every week. So everybody's in the Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person course. We'll be on Zoom together once a week. There will be two members calls in November too. And then we'll try to continue that. But in December, I head to Thailand. So we'll see how the time difference changes for everybody. Ciao.
So you're going to Thailand in December? Is that what you just said?
December 3rd. Yep, we take off on
Okay,
the 3rd.
cool.
And when you come back on the